Hey, Gecko and Isopod fans, this is Wally with Supreme Gecko, and I am so excited about today's interview with Craig Hansen from BashCoder Reptiles. We talk a lot about the animals. We talk about the care of the animals. We talk about enclosures. We talk about all things associated with this hobby of ours, specific about the animals. We rarely see people talking about business. We rarely deep dive into the business of what we're doing here. Today we're going to talk about reptiles and the business, and specifically how to move your maybe starter business or new business with the reptiles forward and how to be successful. One of the most fun things for me in this hobby is to get consultations, have people call me and say, hey, Wally, I'm not sure if I want to do a reptile show or not. Help me along this whole process and help me understand what it takes to do a reptile show. Help me understand what it takes to do, an online sales, a store page. Help me understand how to keep up with social media and selling your animals that way. And it is kind of tricky. It's easy to do. It's easy to take your hobby and make it into a business and maybe cover your costs. The hard part is taking it to the next level and maybe even making some good income and replacing your current, potentially, job that you have right now. So that's the fun part. The hard part is going to shows and seeing people come in, reptile breeders come in for their first show and only last a couple, 3 shows and see them disappear because they don't have their ducks in a row. They don't have things that set the right way. And they're in and out. That's hard for me. And I'm sure that it's hard for the people doing this. They feel frustrated. Well, again, today we're going to talk about some of those basics about taking your reptile hobby into a business. And we're so fortunate today because we have Craig Hansen of BashCoder Reptiles. And I'm looking over to my right here because I was introduced personally, not to Craig, but to his Instagram page. And my gosh, folks, if you haven't seen his Instagram page, BashCoder Reptiles, you have to go there. Not only is Craig sharing education content, but he's also sharing business content as well. I've got to read this stuff off. This is crazy. Educational, how to safely open your ball python's mouth every time using a soft plastic pipelet. Python pitfalls, a reptile thermostat primer in 90 seconds. But then from a business standpoint, planning and budgeting your reptile purchases, best and worst practices for selling. What does it cost to keep and breed ball pythons? Thinking in 3D. I love that. I love that topic. And I love most of all his repeatable segments, pretend questions. Absolutely love that. I love the German accent. That is a good question. So, in Craig's words, let's go. Craig, thank you very much for coming on and sharing your experience with reptile keeping and moving your reptile hobby into a business. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Wally. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited about having you. Again, because you have the experience and you have that ability, in my mind, to present that to people and share your experience in a great, great way, not in a way that demeans anybody, but kind of brings them into the picture and makes them feel very, very comfortable. I felt very comfortable, so thank you for that. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about Craig, a little bit about your business?
Sure. I'm Craig Hansen. I really got into this right at the beginning of COVID. My daughter said, Dad, I want a snake. And I thought she was being serious, but she wasn't. She was just putting one over on me and Mom. So I went in and I studied everything about all the reptiles. I studied all different kinds of snakes and decided a ball python would be a good way to go. And, she and I were kind of going through a rough patch at the time. So I thought, well, this will be a great mutual hobby we could do, get some alone time, get some good quality time together. So I got a ball python and I showed it to her and she was all excited. But then she said, yeah, I wasn't really serious. And what does it eat? And her favorite animals on the planet are all rodents. And so she kind of demurred and said, maybe this isn't for me. I really appreciate you trying to do this, but maybe it isn't for me. Well, then I got hooked. I fell in love with these things. And then I started studying more about it and discovered that it could also be a business. I discovered, how you can breed morphs together and create new and interesting color and pattern combinations. And I got hooked. So I backed into it, really. I wasn't out looking for another hobby. I have way too many hobbies already.
You have a history that I'm just learning about today, going through some of your Instagram posts. Tell us a little bit about your past history and how that plays into what you're doing today with your business.
Sure. I used to make records. I'm a recording engineer, record producer. In the 90s, I did that for 10 years in the 90s, and I made probably 35 records. And that really I use that every day because, I'm doing live content, I'm doing camera work, and I'm doing audio work. And so that really helps me, and it gives me kind of a unique thing I can share with other reptile keepers to help them move their social media platforms forward. Then I started a company that was an internet company, and I sold it to a public company. And then I worked for that public company for a while, was a division president, and learned all about retail. I basically backed into being a retailer, and I did that for about 15 years. And now I'm a consultant to retailers. So we do internet services for retailers. So what I hope I can bring to the table is this, some expertise on how to deal with customers, how to support customers, how to manage costs and operate your business like it's a business. And so I try to use all those skills every day in what we're doing.
And that's a great point because there's many different facets to this whole process of moving your hobby into a business. It's not just, let's see how this goes. I'll sell some animals online. I'll sell some animals at a reptile show. There's a lot, and you can do that, but your expected success rate is going to be a little bit pulled back there. So we're going to talk more about social media. We're going to talk more about shows and online, things like that.
Great.
I'm going to go back to your business. This is only a few years, really, that you've been doing this. And I was shocked at that, simply shocked. I guess not so much about how you've progressed from a social media standpoint, but from the number of snakes you keep. You just built a new facility last year, correct? Tell us
Correct.
a little bit about how the business has moved forward that way.
Well, we were living in a community that had the HOA agreement from hell, and I was pushing it really hard. I mean, we were allowed to have 3 animals in the house, in our whatever that contract is you sign for the HOA, right? And so at that time, I had built up. I had started raising my own rodents. I had 200-300 rodents. I had over 150 animals, and I realized, and the space wasn't working anymore. And I did the math on what it would take to rent a space, a facility, a dedicated facility, versus what it would take to just move to a new house that had a basement big enough to house a facility. And so that's what we did. We basically moved because of the reptiles. And so we have a very spacious facility in our basement now. So that has been a big help. But one of the things is I got in fast, and I bought a bunch of animals fast. And a lot of people do that.
Yep.
And I did that without locking in a mentor first, without seeking community first. And that was my first big mistake. Now, there were a lot I learned from it. I learned how to keep 3 animals, 10 animals. I learned how to scale it, individual tubs before buying into racks. I learned how to properly thermostat and heat and manage humidity in large, tubs. So it wasn't all for naught, but I ended up buying animals that couldn't move me forward as a business. I think a lot of people do that. They have their first collection, then they have their real collection, especially in ball pythons. I don't know how it is with other reptile disciplines.
I look at this whole ball python situation as being exactly the same as crested geckos. I started with crested geckos 22 years ago, and I got into it kind of the same way. In the first 2 or 3 years, I was doing the same exact thing that you were doing, and then redesigned our basement to facilitate reptiles. At least half of it. My wife was on the other half with the home daycare. But you're right. You jump into it, and you're not really looking at 5 or 10 years down the line. You're looking at tomorrow, and you're looking at next year, and that's about as much vision as you're really taking into it. So crested gecko, same as ball pythons.
And just like I know a lot of crested gecko breeders do, buying breeder adults initially so you could get started right away. And I bought proven breeders right away. Without really understanding what I was getting into. Why did they sell? Why are they selling their proven breeders? Why are they are they not producing? Are they not eating? Are they difficult? Are they mousers? What are the different reasons they might be selling these? And I just bought them thinking, man, this will be great. I'll be able to get output next year. And you're exactly right. I was looking right, just 6 months to 1 year in front of myself instead of taking a 5-10 year view. So once I kind of realized this, once I started getting into community, which is, I think, essential and vital in every discipline of reptile keeping, I joined a Patreon. For me, it was the Mutation Creation Canada Patreon with Billy Rose. And I found a mentorship. And this is what I love about what you provide, Wally. You provide this mentorship and, over 20 years of experience, and you share informational content. Oh, my gosh, I love your video about getting started in reptiles that you just posted about a month ago. Oh, my gosh.
Thank you.
Such a great video. And I didn't start with that, And so we did a thing called a chopping block. And I actually did it in the first episode of the Reptile Workshop to show people what one was. But I was the victim / beneficiary of the chopping block. And I put my collection up there. And basically everyone said, can't get there from here, Craig. You're going to have to sell most of your animals and start over. And they were right, because I had, starter animals that were going to yield, as a business now, was going to yield, $100 animals. Yep. And at scale, that doesn't make anybody any money. Not to say that it can't be fulfilling, not to say that you can't really have great times at shows, really cater to that pet market, experience the joy of people finding and keeping their animals. But our goal was to really reach the enthusiast and the breeder market segments. If you split it into 3, maybe you've got your pet keeper / kind of light hobbyist. Then you've got the enthusiasts that don't know how to hobby light, and then you've got the breeders that are really wanting to take this to the next level. And it's those top 2 segments that I really want to focus on, and my collection wasn't geared towards that goal. It wasn't a bad collection, it just wasn't geared towards the goal.
Right.
And so my first kind of significant setback was that, learning that I had made bad choices because I just kind of went randomly buying snakes.
It's interesting, though, that you're kind of stepping back and refocusing. I guess I want to ask two questions here, kind of lumped into one.
Yeah.
Was that so earth-shaking when you realized that? And kind of to tag on to that, did you at that point say, "Oh my gosh, wrong direction, refocus, let me understand, let me identify my niche and who I want to focus my sales to?" And did you completely kind of redo your like mission? I don't know if you have a mission statement or something in the back of your mind. Did you kind of take a step back and take the eraser and start writing again?
I felt like it was 3 steps forward, 2 steps back,
Okay.
maybe a step and a half back. Because what had I done with that first collection? I had learned how to scale. I had learned when to move to a rack system. I'd made lots of mistakes, and most of my expertise in life comes from my mistakes. And so I had made a ton of mistakes that were not related to my collection, but related to the keeping and breeding of these wonderful animals. And so I don't count it as a lost year. I count it as, okay, I'm going to pay a little bit of a stupid tax,
Yep.
but I learned a lot along the way. My mission statement, I would say, would be to really assist the enthusiast and breeder community to reach their goals. And I want to do that through providing excellent animals, education, and encouragement.
I love it.
That's the closest thing I
absolutely
can
love
come to a mission statement.
I love the part about, quality animals. So we're going to do business. We're going to, address this niche. We're going to reptile, blah, 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 blah. Quality animals, period. And everything stops there. So that's right at the top of the pyramid. And then you can work down off of that. And that's exactly what we've done as well early on. We said, doesn't matter if we're producing bad animals or just okay animals. We want to produce quality animals. Now, you talked about, those 3 different levels and focusing on the top level and the middle level. From day one with crested geckos, I've always focused on the middle level and the pets. I don't want to ever get out of the pet crested geckos because I love doing shows and I love kids walking up and being able to show them a crested gecko and coming to something that they can afford to take home as their very first family reptile or first family gecko. So that's for us. And I think everybody has to go through that. Who am I going to try to address with, from a business end? But my goodness, start with it, your mission statement, start with quality animals, and then work your way down. How am I going to accomplish this? I love it.
Once you put that word quality in, it really forces you to up your game top to bottom. Like you have to, if you want quality animals, you're going to have healthy animals. If you want healthy animals, you better have healthy rodents. And if you want to have healthy rodents, you better learn. I quickly found out that when I first got in, I thought, frozen thawed rodents are purchased and you can buy them and they ship them to you and then you just thaw them and feed them. And that's what I was going to do because no way was I going to start raising rodents. And oh my gosh, was I wrong with ball pythons. Now with my boas and with other like short-tailed pythons, they'll eat anything. But my ball pythons are very picky and a good number of them need to have live prey. And so I quickly figured out the economics of buying frozen thawed. So for my animals that do take frozen thawed, I make my own frozen thawed now. But reptile effort, 1/3. Rodent effort, 2/3.
Interesting. So, you've already said many, many things that I've expressed to, our viewership over and over and over. You talked about finding a mentor. And I feel like in nauseam, I say that every single show that I do. Find 3 people that you can go to and ask questions, and they'll treat you just like your Joe average gecko keeper or reptile keeper, and you feel comfortable with them, and they're knowledgeable. But take those 3 mentors, but always go back to do a Google search and look up temperatures and look up locations, look up all of that stuff, and make sure that it makes sense to you. But oh my gosh, the mentorship point is so important. How did you find your mentors?
Groups like yours. So Patreon groups was how I found it. I don't know how it is in the gecko community and the ball python community and the boa community. Facebook groups are pretty toxic. And a lot of people wanting to criticize everybody. And what I found was on Instagram, I just found encouragers. And I found a lot less of the trolls,
Yep.
And so getting to know people on Instagram and joining a couple Patreons. And I like what you said about 3 mentors, because I'm in 3 Patreons just so I don't get, there's groupthink,
Yep.
And you'll find it. You'll find when you're swimming in different streams, you'll find that these streams have self-selected each other and they all agree on a lot of things. So it's really great to have swim in a couple different streams, because a lot of people find a mentor. It's the first person. Maybe it's the breeder they bought their first snake from. But that mentor can only show you what they know how to do. And if they're sort of like a level 1 breeder, they can only really mentor you to level 1 standards. And so what I've found really encouraging in the reptile community as a whole is that it's full of people that are willing to share, And I think maybe back in the old days, maybe they were less willing to share. From what I hear, I wasn't around, in the early days of the ball python industry. But I hear stories about how everybody was closed and everybody wouldn't tell you what's in their racks and wouldn't tell you what projects they were working on. It was all so secret. Now there's nothing secret, right? Now we have Morph Market. You can see what everybody's working on. You can see what their projects are. And it's just about how can we help each other get to our goals.
That's a really good point. I kind of feel like, there's a little bit of gatekeeping still going on.
Yeah.
But I like the fact, the point that you made about 3 mentors. I've said that forever, but you've kind of taken it to another level. And that is that, 3 people, if I'm in a group with 3 other people and I ask the question, so this gecko, what temperature should I keep it in? If it's me and you and we're talking geckos, I might not have the same concerns about, I better be spot on with this conversation, and I better know my stuff, because there's 2 other people in the group that's going to keep me honest on this and call me out, which they rightfully should if I'm wrong, or maybe not wrong, but I've kept it this way, but maybe somebody else has kept it differently, and maybe it's environmental. Maybe my house is so much drier. Or I'm keeping my animals in smaller enclosure. It could be 100 different factors. So I think with those 3 people, listen. Oh, Joe was a little bit different. Why? Hey, Joe, let me ask you, I've heard this. You're doing this. Why is that? Well, blah, 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 blah. More details. Oh, that's why, because you're keeping them you're feeding a different foods, whatever. So it's just that exchange, going back to the old days and the reptile forums, yes, I'm that old.
Fauna classified.
King snake.
King snake.
King
yeah.
snake. I think that there was some of that, keeping people honest. You post, you better be right, because somebody's going to call you out. Hopefully they do it with tact and all, but
Yeah.
I think today, when we talk about Facebook, there's not much tact, and that's a shame. So in a long way around, to get back to your point about, getting involved with a group, especially like a Patreon group where you can bounce the ideas off of each other. What a phenomenal idea. What a phenomenal idea. And, there's some paid groups, there's but you can also go to reptile shows and talk to people and get your mentorship that way as well.
Absolutely. It's I really think the kind of wisdom we need, I guess there's kind of an information hierarchy, right? You get data, which kind of turns into knowledge, which that, I don't know the whole pyramid, but I know at the top is wisdom, and to be able to apply what you're hoping for is not just a mentor that will say, okay, the hot thing out there right now is ultramopides. So these are the animals you need to go buy. Now go buy them. What you really want is a questioning mentor who's asking you questions like, what are your goals? What do you want to do? What are your favorites? And then if your favorites are pitfalls, and if the things you want to accomplish are full of pitfalls, then they'll sort of talk you through that and sort of lead you to refinements on your ideas,
I love that. So it's more of a sounding board than it's, here's the right answer. Here's the right answer, Wally. Go do this. Go now. Go and perform. And it's more, well, what do you really want? What's your goals? Where do you see yourself in a year or 2 or 3 or 5? I love that. Good point. So I think that the mentorship thing is such an important thing. And again, I mentioned it in like every show. So sorry, viewers, I'm mentioning it again, but I think it's so important. Tell us a little bit about maybe a couple of other success stories that you've had with your business, as far as you've grown. You talk about scaling up and topics like that. If you could, share a couple of other success stories with us.
I think one of the success stories was more of a process one. Now, I haven't sold a lot of animals. I've sold a few animals over the last couple of years, just as we start to get production ramped up. So I wouldn't say that I have like business success stories, although I would consider my first couple shows as huge successes. Why? Because of how much I learned, not because of how much I sold. I sold some animals and all that, but I really encourage people to get out there and start vending. It's, you will learn so much, and if you have anything to sell, go out and vend, because you meet your customer, you find out what their concerns are. You can assume that your concerns are everyone's concerns, but they're not.
Yes.
And people will share with you a whole broad range of considerations that you had never thought of. So get out and do those shows. And I think one of my successes was getting out and really, jumping off the porch, as they say, and getting in and vending a show. Another success came from a big failure. And I think it's important for us to share our failures even when they're terribly embarrassing, right? Because people need to know that these things can happen. And once you scale, one mistake can affect a bunch of animals. And that happened to me in my rodent room, okay? I have a rack of a bunch of colonies, and then I have another rack for maternity, okay? And I raise Norwegian rats, and when I find one that's pregnant, I put her in a maternity tub and then let her have her litter without being, constantly bothered by the other animals, and potentially the pups, get predation, So, well, one day I was moving the racks, and I have 2 water lines. I have a water line that feeds through a pressure regulator into my main rack, and then another water line that leads into my maternity rack. And while I was moving it, I turned off the water feed, and I forgot to turn it back on. And in the coming days, they were eating fine, everything looked fine, but I wasn't going in there and checking the water nipples and making sure they were working, right? And I had a near colony collapse of all my colonies. At least 2/3 of my animals died.
Oh.
Terrible failure, right?
Yep.
But learning how to bounce back from that was a big success. And we were able to not only rebuild our colonies with a minimum of downtime, but we're able to rebuild them better, and we were able to put in place policies and procedures where we check for that, and we pretend, the problem is we think, well, I don't need to do that because I know I didn't turn the water off. Well, are you sure you didn't turn the water off? and
I tell you what, I will never forget that again because I made that mistake. Yeah, it's probably going to happen tomorrow.
That's right. That's exactly right. And so, so I think some of the biggest successes have been that. I think the other success I've had as a business is to connect with a community and sort of find people that self-identify as they like what I'm saying, they like what I'm doing. Maybe I'm not saying new things, but I'm saying it in a different way. And so that has been a big success for us on the content side, and I think that's really important. Why? Because people are looking for people to trust.
Yes.
And trust is huge.
Yes.
When we do a transaction, a commerce transaction, all the money is how much do I trust you to give me what I expect to get? And the money is the expression of that trust, And so I think when people get to know you virtually, they get to trust you more. And so hopefully that will become a success. And people, when I really start selling in earnest, that that those relationships will be built and people will know who they're buying from.
I'm going to come back to the community point in just a second with the issue with the rats, with your feeders. And I'm going to get to a point. I'm going to get to a statement that I make all the time because I'm like my worst enemy. You come down, you see the issue, you beat yourself up. You fix it, obviously. You fix it. Then you beat yourself up. But then you start, here's what I think you're saying. You start examining the issue, the process, and how to, number one, fix it long term. Number two, make sure that it never happens again. So do you take one of your red magnetic circle things and put it on that when you're turning off the... I love your red circle magnets that you move when you're feeding it. That is so cool. That's so nerdy.
It is nerdy, but it's also, there's too much at stake.
Yeah.
To get something wrong, like, did I feed this animal? There's especially, and I think if you're feeding live prey to animals, there's way too much at stake in accidentally leaving a live animal in a tub, right? So right. I do these colored magnets and move them around because I have ARS racks. With freedom breeders, you're going to have to come up with something else because they're stainless steel and they're not magnetic. But with ARS racks or anything like that, you can use Post-its. You can use whatever.
Painter's tape.
Painter's tape. Absolutely. And I use painter's tape on here to tell me which ones are gravid. And so I just put a blue strip of painter's tape if they're gravid, green if they need to be paired, stuff like that. So anything you can do like that, because there's too much at stake to just sort of think I'm going to remember it,
And my problem is, now that I'm 162 years old, is that I get downstairs and I start working on something. Oh, I've got to feed the baby geckos. I have to feed the baby geckos. But then I run over to the mealworms, and oh my gosh, I'm looking at the adult mealworms too. I've got to feed them before I feed my adults later this afternoon. So then I run to the refrigerator and get the carrots. And then when I'm looking in the refrigerator, oh, I need more mealworms for next week. So I better bring out. And then it's like, where did this start? Because I'm like 6 levels deep. So I do, unfortunately, the painter's tape. So I'll go downstairs and I'll set up for a recording of a video for our long form videos, and I'll turn off all the fans. And then sure enough, every bloody time. I'll come back upstairs and it's like a day later. Yeah, I think I had left all my fans off. I better go run down and turn on the fans. Happens all the time. So we just get we get distracted. We get preoccupied so quickly. Something major like that. I love your idea of throw a sticker up, throw a magnet up, and just remind you or whatever. And always look at improving that process. And I want to get back real quick. I know this is your show, and I apologize for talking so long, but
No.
I have now the ability that excuse me, sorry about that. I have the ability to, and I didn't have this maybe 5-6 years ago, to self-forgive. Oh my gosh, I just spent $1,000 on these geckos, and I've had them for a month, and they died. I suck. I'm a terrible gecko keeper. Why did I think that I could do something with this? And
Right.
so,
Just bludgeoning yourself.
just bludgeoning. Never, Wally, never ever get those animals. Don't even get any rear geckos because you can't handle them. So, I think I tried to replace that with more research and more mentorship. Find out what's going on and what are the gotchas. What are the gotchas with these animals? Oh, you have to miss every day instead of every 2 days? Oh my gosh, I would have never have thought of that. So practice a lot of research, but as importantly, I think, practice self-forgiveness. And if you lose something, stress about it. There's nothing wrong with that. And beat yourself up and go watch the Flintstones and give up for an hour or two. But then get right back into it and say, what was the problem? Where did I go wrong? How do I fix? Maybe I don't want to work with those animals anymore, but what did I do wrong and how can I fix that for the next set of animals? So I've gotten very good at self-forgiveness simply because, like you had mentioned, I've made so many flippin' mistakes in this hobby. I have to do that or I would have given up so long ago.
It's a great point, because you have to move forward. And when we're, bludgeoning ourselves over our mistakes, we're like, I find myself constantly having contempt for yesterday, Craig. And that is not a path forward. That is a circular, problem that takes you down the drain. You have to forgive yourself to move forward, and but you also need to put something in place to make sure it doesn't happen again. And you don't want it to happen again for 2 reasons. First, you don't want it to hurt the animals, first and foremost.
Yep.
Second, you don't want this cycle of self-condemnation to continue. And you want to get past it. You want to work through it. So mistakes come with it. You're going to, at some point, every keeper is going to have an animal die in their care. And at some point, you're going to have an animal get sick.
Yep.
And, or prolapse or whatever. You're going to have these things happen. And the degree to which you can adapt and move forward is the degree to which you'll have success.
1,000% agree with that. It's so important, and I see, we go back to Facebook again, and I see over and over and over, I lost this animal, I'm ready to give up, I don't know what to do, and if that's your release, that's cool, and you need to do that, but the sooner you can, stop sitting on the couch watching the Flintstones and feeling sorry for yourself and get your butt up and start doing something to fix it. The sooner you can do that, the better off you're going to be, and start being constructive rather than destructive.
Yep.
I want to spend just a second here before we get into some very specific, and we've talked business a little bit, the reptile business a little bit, hobby to business, but I want to find out in the next maybe year to 5, where is BashCoder Reptiles going? Where do you see? What's your vision for maybe the next year, maybe 5 years from now? Do you have I'm so geeky and nerdy that I have a spreadsheet and I, have all that information. And here's where I want to be. Never, it always changes throughout the year. But how much of that do you do with your business, Craig?
I do it in a couple different ways. First, I think it's really important, and we probably get into this a little bit later, but it's really important to know your costs. And knowing your costs is the first thing. Driving cost out of your business is really hard. So in the next year, I look to drive some cost out of the business. There's some areas that I've identified because I counted everything up and I put dollars to everything. And there's some areas where I can improve my efficiencies. So in the 1 year term, I'm looking at taking myself to 25 to 40 clutches. That's my goal in the 1 year term. And honestly, the 25 to 40 is a game time decision based on a number of factors, not the least of which is the market, right?
Yes.
And then over the 5 year, really what I'm doing is I'm looking at multiple recessive projects and trying to figure out how I'm going to get from here to there over 5 years on a project basis in my ball python stuff. I'm also looking, I've got diversity goals for other species. I find that we're starting to hear lots of stories about how it's difficult to get into the best shows if all you have are ball pythons. You might have the same issue with crested geckos. If all you have are cresteds, you may have a hard time getting into a show. So you want to throw some leechies in, throw some gargoyles in, throw some cave geckos in, or whatever, and like have a diversity there. So when a promoter looks at you, they see interest. They see, well, I definitely would sell a ticket to somebody coming to see this table. So over 5 years, those are my goals. Also, though, at the end of 5 years, I want to be truly profitable. And the only way to be truly profitable is to be honest with yourself about costs. And but that's really where I want to be. I haven't been in a huge hurry to be profitable. I sort of learned that after my first year. Being in a hurry can lead to, bad decisions. So I'm trying to think more in terms of the time cycles that these animals are at. They live 20, 30, 40 years, and it takes 3 years or longer for a female to be up to breeding size. It can take 1 to 2 years for a male to be up to breeding size. If you're constantly flailing around making fast decisions when the process is really slow, and everything about the hobby is really slow.
Yes.
I'm over the next 5 years, I really hope to really settle into the timing of everything, if that makes any sense.
Yes. So this was completely 100% unintentional, but your answer is just absolutely perfect because I didn't intend for you to come back and say, well, in the next year, I'm expecting to be at 50,000 in 5 years, 100,000. Good gosh, people, if you're looking at the money aspect, you're already lost. And I'll be very blunt. We talked already about quality animals, and we talked about, looking at the market and examining and analyzing and figuring out your niche and where you fit in and what you want to focus on, and does that fit the market now and maybe 5 years from now. In all, it sounds like what you're doing is saying, if I do this, this, and this, and I add on this product line and I change this up a little bit, the money's going to come. Because based on my review of the market and what I'm doing now and where I want to go with the animals and maybe with some products. I mean, my gosh, people, if you're taking dubia roaches to shows and putting dubia roaches, you better have a feeder food as well. because some shows you're going to sell this and some shows you're going to not sell that, and you better have something. When you talk about diversity, that's like you're reading my mind or something, because I talk about that all the time. We've had show after show after show where we just don't sell any crested geckos at all. That's the way it is. Oh, luckily I have rare geckos too. Luckily I have the Pangea. Luckily I have something else that kind of holds us over and saves the day for us. Love that answer.
We have you know, I'm a reseller for Go for Cocoa
Yes.
substrates, and I have had a show where I didn't sell any animals, but I sold out of Go for Cocoa, and that not only paid for the tables, but it put me in the black for the whole show. And so sidelines are really important. We learn this a lot in retail. You know, when you go into a department store, you'll see they've got something for everybody, and they're trying to hit all these different price points, and trying to why? Because we don't have a one-size-fits-all hobby, and so we need to be able to I think it's very important for us as vendors to set our customers up for success.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and to have enough dialogue with them to get a good sense of what will work for them and set them up for success.
So we're going full circle here, and now we're back into the business thing. And when you talk about setting up your customers for success, the point there is, I'll dive into this hard, is that the first-time customer has so much value. Here's the value of a first-time customer. That second customer has this much. The third time that they've come by the table, the value is, exponential. It really is. So everything that you do, you shouldn't be looking at that one-time sale. You should be looking at multiple sales and trying to establish, you said it before, a community of not just, people that follow you on Instagram or Facebook, but a community of customers. I hate to use the word customer, but a community of people that come to your table looking for you. Hey, I bought an animal 6 months ago. Now it's ready to breed. Wally, do you have just a minute to talk about how do I set it up and what else do I need? And maybe that will work to a sale, maybe not, but it's just building that community. Love that answer.
We talk about the total lifetime value of a customer in business, and one of the nice things economically about the reptile business is that it's difficult just to have one reptile. and you don't...
I think that's actually a sin. Hold on, let me look it up. Yeah, that is a sin to have just one.
Yeah, having just one when there are so many that need your care. So there really are opportunities to build long-term customer relationships with people. And so you never discount how far a little piece of advice will take that customer, and what kind of gratitude they'll have for you, and how you'll be the first go-to the next time they want to move a step forward. That means, however, we have to constantly be moving forward, because we can't be coming to the shows with the same stuff every year, every week, week in and week out, and then expect to help our customers move forward and reach their goals. So it puts the onus back on us to constantly be making capital investments in new animals and new racking, and there's a constant capital input that is required to stay ahead. And where we're really trying to stay ahead is not the other breeders. We're trying to stay ahead of our customers.
Wow. Great point. And I think during the show we've kind of addressed kind of this middle ground of improving your situation, and that leads right into the business end of things. I'm going to back up a little bit, just maybe a step and a half or so, and talk about Amy calls me and says, Wally, I'm getting, like I said in the beginning of the show, Wally, I want to get into selling. I have, so many extra animals, and I've looked at this and I've planned a little bit. I have such a fear about doing a show or selling online or talking on social media. Help me through this. How can I do this? I don't even know where to start. Through your experience, and you've been doing this for a few years, and you've been doing it, in my opinion, at an accelerated rate because you know how to plan and you know how the process works. What are a couple of kind of pointers, 2 or 3 pointers that you would give Amy that maybe calls you and says, "Yeah, Wally didn't know what to say and he didn't tell me anything." So help me, Craig. Help me survive this moving forward with the show. What are some pointers you could give to Amy and reassure her that she's doing the right thing, and also how to succeed? Either let's take selling at a reptile show.
Okay. I would say when you're about to sell at a reptile show, your branding's really important. And so I would have your logo locked in if you can. Now, if you're just there on a table with some stuff, that's fine. Whatever you need to do. But I find that it's really impactful. It's the most impactful place to get your brand out in a very formal way, in a kind of a professional way. So I would say, if you're investing in doing your first show, there's just a couple things that make all the difference. First, get a Square reader and get an account set up with Square so you can take payments, credit card payments. Second, have some cash in your pocket so you can make change for the people that want to make cash. Third, have some hand sanitizer there. Breath mints. Have some breath mints. Get yourself some Altoids. Like basics. It's blocking and tackling here, right? I would say in terms of expenses, Amy, get yourself a nice tablecloth with your logo on it. And then once you're comfortable and you can afford it, get a big backdrop with a great presentation of your logo. This is also the test of your logo. If your logo doesn't look good on a tablecloth or on a backdrop, then it's no good to you. And it's one of the tests of your logo.
I struggle. I tell you, Craig, I struggle not being 100% honest with other keepers that have names of their business that are Bill and Judy's animals. I struggle because I'll say this, for Supreme Gecko, I spent probably 2 or 3 months, and I had a list I spent more time trying to decide the name of our business than any of our 3 boys' names. Don't tell Nanette that I just said that. So I think the name is very, very important. Come up with something that identifies you, something if you can, that identifies the type of animals that and I'm not talking about ball pythons, geckos, crested geckos, about the quality or the size or the colors or something specific, so you kind of stand out and somebody looks at Supreme Gecko and they kind of get a feel immediately of what you're doing there. The logo thing I think is so important, and you can find online. You can go on Facebook to graphic designers and find somebody to do a logo. You can go to Fiverr and find somebody to do a logo for $10. Have an idea and say, here's what I'm thinking. Give me 4 examples. Yeah, and I think what you're talking about here, coming up with a logo, coming up with a tablecloth, coming up with a banner, we're probably talking $150 maybe.
Maybe, but it's highly leveraged. It produces for you. A lot of businesses would love to have that as their advertising budget. Put it that way. That it's a low investment to make a really strong impression. Now, we're not all going to have, the big setups and all the, acrylics and everything that other big breeders have. That's not the important thing. The important thing is that they come to you and they feel like they're coming to a going concern, not a, is he going to be here next week, or is this just a fly by night thing? And so you just need to establishment,
It's kind of a consistency so that people know that if I buy something from you, you're going to be around tomorrow or the next show, and I can ask you questions about this animal. And I think that gives the presence, or not the word illusion is coming to mind, and I know that's the wrong word, but it gives you the appearance of that you're in it for in it to win it. You're not just fly by night. I've got 20 animals extra. Here's a table. I'll sell them, and I might be back next year. Really, really good point. Anything else that comes to mind? So Amy sets up her table. She has that nice tablecloth. She has business cards too. It cost her $25 to do business cards after she did that logo.
Yep.
She has a nice banner. It cost her $50 for that banner, but oh my gosh, it really looks sharp with that logo that she just did. What's her next step? She's done 2 or 3 shows. She's kind of gotten some experience. What's that next step to move into the big leagues, to moving on up to the east side?
E-commerce. If you talk to, I sat down last weekend, got to hang out with Will from Flawless Exotic Creations, and they have a great gecko business. He says that his business is 85% online and 15% at shows. And he makes the case for going to shows with a bunch of animals that are not even for sale, but using that show as a way to move people to their online channel where they can really find their full assortment. So once you start getting an assortment, you can't bring it all to shows, Yep. And so e-commerce, I believe, is really key. There aren't that many shows, and in order to make it as a business, I don't think. I think you have Morph Market was probably the biggest sea change that we've seen in the reptile industry. Along with the logistics to back it up. Ship Your Reptiles, Reptiles Express, Redline. Having relationships with those companies is like you can outsource your e-commerce. E-commerce is the biggest expense in retail. It's a massive expense in retail, I'll say. Probably rent is the biggest expense in retail, but occupancy cost, we call it. But the and labor. But if you're looking at where you can get, what we're looking for is leverage, force multipliers. Okay. Now you go with someone like Redline, you have a logistics team behind you, and they're talking with you about your experience end to end. So when your customer's worried, like this is a high pressure situation when you're shipping your reptiles. There's a lot at stake, and the customer feels a lot at stake. There's a lot of money at stake, but there's also, oh my gosh, this is a soft, fragile animal, and it's going to go on a plane and get put through that parcel process, And so having a good partner, shipping partner, that whenever anyone's worried and someone misses a day, you have someone you can call. It's huge. Totally outsourced. Doesn't cost you hardly anything, and you have a whole logistics team. Same with Morph Market. We now have a way to sell online without you having to build your own website. There's a lot of cases for why you want to have a website.
Yes.
But direct sales is not necessarily it. So that's really the next step. And that's the stage I'm at right now, is where I have done all my sales in, I have an e-commerce background, but I've done all my sales of reptiles in person. And so this is the morph market year for me. Hence that.
I was going to, make it a little bit obvious with you with the hat and everything. And
Yeah.
Darian, whatever you want to say about Darian, he's brilliant. He's a brilliant marketer, and he's taken Morph Market. And again, whatever you want to read on Facebook or wherever,
Right.
it's ruining it. I tell you what, it's showing more animals to more people and making those animals available. Sales are sales, numbers are numbers, and I don't think that the numbers lie. That there has never been a period in the reptile hobby where it's been so easy to post and to pick animals that you're looking for to sell or to buy. It's just simply amazing. So my question back to you then is, Amy, okay, I've done 4 shows. I want to start the e-commerce thing. Should I just post on Morph Market and forget about a website for now until I get more experience with the whole shipping part? Or should I kind of go down both and leverage, a website, a store, a shopping cart, and do Morph Market? What do you think?
I think.
Or what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
I have a website, but it's mostly to link to my other things.
Okay.
It's a single page website right now. And I build websites for a living, so for me to say I just have a single page website is sort of meaningful because, I build e-commerce sites for retailers. And I'm not building one for myself because it's a solved problem. I could build the site, but the hardest part is getting the eyeballs to the site. It's the hardest part on the internet has always been getting the traffic, and I don't think it makes sense to tell people from all walks of life that you need to build a website.
Yep.
It's because, and I'm a web developer and I don't even do it. I think that it's most important to be where the action is. In retail, we think about power, like a mall has a certain power to it, meaning how many drive-bys do they get in a day? How many people come in and out of that mall a day? And does it have big anchors? Does it have a big anchor store, like a big grocery store, like a big, Dick's Sporting Goods, or does it have a Bass Pro Shops, or what does it have that's going to bring other people near my store? And that's what Morph Market has. And so I think that it is done too early, almost a wasted effort to put out the several $100s, because you'll find someone to build you a website. You won't find someone to keep it up. And so that's the hard part. And with Morph Market, it's just all about your listings. It's all about your animals. And I would venture to say every animal you sell direct on your website is a rating you could have had on Morph Market. So that might be a little controversial for some people, and there might be a lot of branding experts that say that, but just I would put a website in the too hard pile until it becomes necessary. There are some people that need that. Like some people have, if you're this way, be sensitive to this. If your product needs to tell a story, I can think of like one, Florida Red Tails is an amazing breeder of very specific bloodlines of BCC boas, and they have a story to tell. Their breeders almost are celebrities, and this animal is going to pair to this animal this year and yield this clutch, and we're going to show all, and you can't really do that very well in Morph Market. Then yes, you need a website. But when it comes to buying them, just click them over to Morph Market.
And I struggle with that. That's a really good point, because I feel like I need to tell a story with my website, and I've spent a lot of time adding a ton of content to it. But I'm coming from old school where, 15, 16, 17, 18 years ago, I built my own website, like your HTML and
Yes.
backslash. And so, I'm still, unfortunately, my mindset is still stuck on that I have to have a website because that's where I want to drive the traffic. Now, having said that, I've struggled with my story. Is my story on my website, or is it on YouTube, or is it is it on Facebook? Is it on Instagram? I don't know. I give up. Maybe I should just dance on TikTok. I don't know. So I've kind of gone through that, and one day, seriously, I'll say, okay, YouTube is where I really want to be, and then tomorrow I'll go, yeah, but I want to do Instagram. So forget YouTube. Start with Morph Market. There's where the decision's made. Start with Morph Market. You can do post some pictures to Instagram, post some pictures to Facebook, but drive that toward PMs and DMs. Hey, I really like the animal, but do you have any available? Do you have any for sale? Sure, here's a link. So Craig, I really, really like that. And the old me is saying, no, you don't, Wally. You have to have a website. And the new me is saying, that website doesn't really matter anymore because you have something so usable and so many, boy, the points that you make here, so many eyes on Morph Market now that really, why should you spend more than, any part of your business income, building a website now? I don't know. Good point.
I just think it's about where you put your effort and where you put your focus. And there are the basic blocking and tackling of this business is so hard, so demanding, that I just think that if we focus on the basics and outsource anything that's not core to your business, and outsource the things that are force multipliers. Anyway.
No, excellent points. And, again, I'll say, to drive that point home, I've had 4 websites. The first one I built, and the second one I used a product called Zoomla. And the third one, I had somebody build it for me. And the fourth one, I'm using Square,
Yep.
and that's okay. And the third one was okay. And the second one was okay. And the first one was fine, but the expectations for the first one weren't that great. Lots of information, and oh yeah, you can buy from here too. But ultimately, none of these 4 sites did exactly, specifically everything that I wanted it to do. So you're never going to be perfect unless you're Walmart or Home Depot and can throw a bazillion dollars into something like that. You talked about focus. The most important thing that you have on the things that are important, and you alluded to this, and I want to make it a real clear point. The one thing that you don't have enough of ever is time. So,
Absolutely.
if you're driving this website together, then your opportunity cost is that website compared to spending time with your animals, spending time on social media, spending time learning photography, spending time learning to dance for TikTok or something that that you could be more productive with. What a great point. Focus your time on the things in this whole process that are more valuable to you. And I think having some kind of a list and focusing on that list is so key. It's key for me because otherwise I just lose focus, and I'm either watching the Flintstones all day or I'm scrolling through TikTok after TikTok after TikTok view. How do you have any suggestions for somebody that's kind of treading water with, okay, so you guys said, maybe not a website, maybe not a store, go to Morph Market. That helps a whole lot. And you guys said, spend some time with shows and take that a little slower, focus on the important things like a logo and a banner and a tablecloth and business cards and so on. Do you have anything that you use to help you, because I sit here at the computer and a bazillion ideas come to mind. And if I don't write them down, like I said before, I'm absent-minded. If I don't write it down on a notepad, they're gone. Do you have any suggestions for somebody that's just kind of treading water with all this stuff that's going on to help them prioritize and focus their limited resource of time into the things that are most important in doing to take their hobby to a business?
Spreadsheets are your friend when you're trying to learn your costs. So I would get, Google Docs, Google Sheets. I use a program called Obsidian, and it's very task-oriented. I love it. It's very complex. I'm a software guy, so I don't mind that. But I really think like note-taking type apps, knowledge-based type apps like Obsidian are great. But know your costs. And what I focus on is my per animal per year cost. And here's how I do it. I look at all my annual costs. I take racks and I depreciate them over 5 years. So I take a rack expense, I split it out over 5 years, okay? And then for 20% of it in the first year, so if I had a rack that cost $5,000, just for a round number, they don't cost that much. My first year, I would take $1,000 of that rack and spread it across my average number of animals that I have in a year. And that would say, that if I had 100 animals, then my racking cost me $100 a year. Now, you actually paid for it all in 1 year, but this is business, and business works on generally accepted accounting practices. And so you need some things you need to expense and some things you need to appreciate. Your big capital goods like racks, you want to depreciate. And so I take a portion of my rack expense and I assign that across all my animals. I take all my rat feed. I take all my supplies, all my vet bills, and my labor, and I split that across all my animals. Now, when I do that, my current cost, just to be fully transparent, is about $157, $159, I think it is right now, per animal per year.
Wow.
And what this
does... And I say wow, not from the, oh my gosh, that's a lot. I say wow from the point of that's pretty cool that you have it itemized down to that degree. That's super cool.
Yeah, so no one can tell you, hey, by the way, this is a free animal. It's not free. It costs you $159 a year on average to own an animal, one animal, right? And so that's my cost. Your mileage may vary, but and then it depends on how much you bake your time into it. I don't bake my time into it because of the opportunity cost. It's cheaper for me to have someone come in and help me with some of the chores. So I have people come in and help me. But it's not really cheaper, but when you factor in the opportunity cost, it is cheaper. And so I could be making more money doing something else than paying someone to do some of the chores, if that makes sense to your viewers. So the thing is to know your cost, and a spreadsheet will help you do that. Just get an estimate and then revise it every 6 months and see if you're going up or down. Yes. And if your costs are going up and your sales are not going up, then that's something for you to work on and figure out, what am I doing differently that's making things so much more expensive.
Oh my gosh. Again, you're reading my mind, because for years and years and years, I worked in IT, before I retired, and then project management, programmer all the way to project management, but every day was spreadsheets. And our viewers are going to just laugh because I say spreadsheets every single video, but it was ingrained that if I have lists, if I have something to analyze, well, it's got to go into a spreadsheet. Now, this year I moved over to Notion, which is a great note-taking tool.
It's in the same category as Obsidian.
Exactly. And for me, it just fit perfectly. But I also bought a little template for financial analysis, and you can plug in your costs. And so I'm looking forward to at the end of the year to do some analysis off of that. It's going to be fun. All that you need though is, gosh, you're right. Google Sheets is free. Go to Google Sheets and put two spreadsheets or one spreadsheet with income and expense and start tracking. Even if you're not 100% complete, at least it gives you a start so that at the end of this year you know where you need to improve or change to keep better records. I love that the fact that you're going all the way down to, each animal, it costs me this much, because that number kind of gets lost on a lot of people, that there's all kinds of other things going on and I just can't give this animal away without it impacting. Then the next animal has to be sold for 170, at least 175 or whatever.
Exactly. And so it's like, and back to Amy, if Amy sells $200 at her first show, she needs to have the framework to understand that she didn't just make $200. The profit, just not to be too pedantic, but the profit is the difference between your revenue and your expenses. And at that show, she probably had to pay $100 for a table, and she had to pay $100 for her backdrop and her thing. So what she did was cover her costs. She also relieved herself of inventory, which lowers her carrying costs. So there's a lot of moving parts in this economically. And so it's very easy for us to be very simplistic about it and say, oh, I'm going to buy this animal for $1,000. I'm going to pair it to this animal for $1,000. And they're going to make me, if it's geckos, they're going to give me 2 eggs every once in a while. And then I'm going to factor that in. And every egg's going to make me $1,000 because the parents are worth $1,000. And it's not that simple. And you really have to factor in your costs. And by the way, your time is worth something. Your time is worth something. And so you really need to assign it anything, minimum wage, whatever, assign it what you make at your job, whatever you want to assign that to, and spread that across your animals. So you're really being honest about the true cost of your business.
And doing the spreadsheets and everything like I do, I know now that I make 23 cents an hour. So I've got that going for me.
Nice. Nice. So the nice thing is that's you could increase by 100% and it wouldn't be that much. So there you go.
Yes, exactly. Really good points that you have to do this. You have to do some even basic accounting, because you could get into the mode that, past Wally did for the first couple of years, and this is $200. I can buy that animal for $200. Score. That planning is so essential. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't buy that $200, but it just means that you have to have a plan for, moving forward and making this business eventually, profitable. That's your ultimate goal. If you're taking your hobby to a business, you have to eventually be profitable.
You do. It's like I suggest books like The Practice of Management by Peter Drucker, or anything by Peter Drucker, honestly. He's a real sage at business fundamentals, and I think another thing for Amy is to realize that, there is such a thing as profit, and you have to price your animals accordingly to get to that. Like you mentioned, you have to make sure that you're not just racing to the bottom in the market in such a way that you don't cover your costs.
It's not easy. It's work. Like I said in the very beginning, it's easy to buy some animals and to sell some animals at shows. But if you want to do it for the long haul, if you don't want to be that 3 shows and I'm out kind of person, you need to do some planning, and it's a little bit of work. For me, it's fun because I like that analysis and high that I get after or lows that I get after working the numbers, at the end of the year. We talked about resources again. Do you have any tips? So we've got a website. We're selling at shows. We're getting people messaging us. Amy's got people now messaging her a couple, 3 times a day. Craig, how do you manage that? How do you manage? I've got to take care of my animals, and I have to do research, and I have to put on my accounting hat, and I have to, maintain my Morph Market account, and I have to take pictures, but now I've got to do messages too. Oh my gosh. Do you have any tips to relate to our viewers on how you manage the whole social media conversation?
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to get out there early with their social media content. And that is a burden. It can be a burden. So try to find ways to do it that's not a burden initially, Burnout is real.
Yes.
And one of the things that burns people out is the treadmill of the algorithm, and so you start getting punished if you stop posting, punished by way of your posts will get lower average views, you'll get lower average engagement, because they're really about what the algorithm is like, what have you done for me lately?
Yes.
And so the one thing I would do is try to compartmentalize your time on the things that you can control your time. What you can control is when you feed, when you clean, when you do your accounting, when you plan. Those are things you can control. What you can't control is this influx of messages. Okay? So I will say that if there's one thing I've learned from me buying so many animals, is that responsiveness is very important to how you present yourself. You could have a great logo, you could have a great brand, you could be a big breeder, a small breeder, but if you don't respond to messages in a timely fashion, you won't close the sale. So what I would try to do is say, all right, I'm not going to be, doom scrolling social media all day. But what I will do is be tactically aware of my messages coming in so I can respond to them. Doom scrolling, I do, while I'm having my coffee before the day starts and maybe for an hour after the day ends, such that I can be interruptible for
Yes.
messaging. And to whatever degree you can set yourself up to be interruptible, you will find there. So, for instance, let's go to Morph Market messages. There are lots of animals for sale on Morph Market. If someone says, hey, I'm interested in yours, you better answer, they're on to another one. And the degree to which you close the sale very much is affected by how fast you respond to that message. You don't know the level of panic or the level of anxiousness or the level of urgency that's on the other line, on the other end of that message. So what I do is I assume they have some urgency. And then that allows me to respond in kind. And they love it. They love it when you answer quickly.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So again, old Wally is going to speak here, and I'm going to go back 22 years when, messages were emails, and if you responded within a day, you're within the, ethical, political, whatever way of communicating. That's okay. It's an email and everybody's busy.
Yep.
That ain't happening today. People want an instant response. If you can't email within or message or whatever, if you can't respond within a half hour to an hour, that's not the end of the world, but you have to your point, I'm just reiterating what you just said, you just have to realize that you potentially could be losing sales, period. And somebody's going to come back and say, well, but I just get all these messages and they're just, tire kickers, so why should I respond so quick? Doesn't matter. That's your job. If you're going to do this for a business, your job is to respond. And if somebody doesn't reply in 5 or 6 days, drop it, move on. Don't take it personal. Just you just can't dwell on it. You just have to move on because people are going to do that, unfortunately. But keep responding as quickly as feasible to you. I'm in gecko poop, a couple hours a day, and I'm not going to grab my phone and
Right.
oh my gosh, and respond right away.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to do that. But I am aware. I will say, if I'm downstairs, I'm feeding or cleaning or whatever. If I get beeped, I'm checking, and I'm going to, with my clean hand, I'm going to check and see what urgency there is. Hey, Wally, I'm working with this. What do you suggest for hides? Okay, that can wait. Wally,
Exactly.
do you have any more viper geckos? And I'm going to say, yeah, this is probably enough that I'm going to wash my hands, go upstairs, and I'm going to jump on the computer and send back a message.
And I understand that a lot of people just don't have that freedom. And at their job, don't get yourself fired. As a matter of fact, here's the other point I would say to people that are trying to transition from a hobby to a business. Don't be in a hurry to quit your day gig, because what you want is to establish a business. The key is to establish it to the point where it proves to you over time that you can leave your day gig. But it has to prove it to you, right? And you have to have, I would say, sustained success. Think of how many reptile breeders you know of that are actually doing it full time. Is it a lot? It's not a lot. It's a few.
It's not.
There's thousands of us in this effort. And I'm not saying it's unreasonable to expect that. It's unreasonable to expect that soon. And so what I would say is, hold on to a job as long as you can so that this thing is as strong as it can be so that you can make that transition.
Wow. Of all the points that you've made here, that's probably, I don't know. I'd have to go back and watch the show, but that is such a strong point, and it applies so much to me and what I did, in IT, and I had a decent paying job, and I could afford to go out and buy, oh my gosh, these are $2,000 for this pair of geckos. Yeah, okay, I can do that. And if I fail, if I really, mess up, well, it's not my business. It's not play money. It's going to, hopefully it doesn't impact the family, but it's not the business's money at that point. Once you draw that line and say, okay, I'm doing this full time now, and I did it, 6-7 years ago, I said, okay, I'm retiring, kind of, sort of, and I'm going to do the reptile thing. The mindset played on me for a while, and it was I could potentially impact the family's financial health if I make this decision. And that's what's really hard. If you have a job, take some of the money, hopefully, expendable money, and use that to build up the business and buy your tablecloth and buy your banner. And even if you're not going to use it, tomorrow, you've got it there ready to go when you're ready. Good point.
Yeah, and it's again, let's get down to the speed of our animals. Like, what's the rush? If you're selling tortoises, and you've got a rush mentality, then maybe you're out of pace with your animals.
Maybe you should get into dart frogs.
Yeah. So, I will also say that, why are people leaving the hobby in such numbers? And I think it behooves us to ask these questions honestly. Yep. My read on it is that there are several factors. First, life happens,
yep.
Right? Life happens, and the plan is not what it was anymore. Okay, and we get that. There's 100 different life events that could do that. The second is having unrealistic expectations that were unmet. You know, someone thought this was going to be like crypto or something, and they could triple their money in a few weeks or something. You know, who knows? But unrealistic expectations being unmet. The third thing is maybe you just don't love it, you know, and you realize that in order to scale out, you really have to love it. Like I'm at 150 animals and I have to love it, you know. I don't have a huge collection. I don't have a small collection, but to be where I am, you have to love it because it's enough work to. And there are days when it's daily, and you want to put it off, and you can't. And then I think, and other people, they bought animals that were not tooled to win. They have a collection that's not set up to win. And it's set up to generate activity, but not much accomplishment. And so those I think are some of the main reasons people get out. So, all right, be aware of that and ask yourself those questions. What are my expectations? You know, do I love this? How much work is too much work? And be honest with yourself so that you're protected against all those things that would threaten your business. Because those are threats. All those things are realistic threats to your business. So you would be foolish to not assess the threats.
Outstanding. We see in the hobby right now a downturn, and I'm going to call it, a spade, that we see this downturn in the reptile hobby right now. I'm going to look at and talk on my end and my perspective, and that's crested geckos. 5-6 years ago, 20,000, 34, 50,000 for an animal, I guess, because that market's gonna just keep going and going. Really, something that's a dominant gene, and you expect this gene to be there, and the value and the market to be in the same place in five years, really? So to your point, you need to kind of know the expectations. You have to know the market. That's your third point, and where that market is going to go. Rare geckos. So you can't create these, and you'll never see a huge number. A specific morph. Maybe it's not a dominant. Maybe it's I don't know, but you have to kind of know that kind of stuff. That doesn't mean that you can't play with some of the things and get your feet wet and sell some babies at reptile shows and sell some babies online. That just means that can't be the focus of your business. You have to understand where the market is right now, and unfortunately, you probably need to know where the market is going to be in a couple of years from now.
It's a crazy business if you think about it. What's a great business? Buy low, sell high.
Right,
that's a great business. This is a business that's very complex. We're buying depreciating assets. The animals, that same morph, especially if it's a dominant morph, is worth less next year than it is today.
Facts of life.
Yep. It's a depreciating asset. But the good news is they make babies. Okay? So your production of offspring has to outpace the depreciation of the asset, right? And if you can do that, you're productive and you're in the plus, okay? If you can't do that, you're always in the minus. So like in the ball python world, you buy an expensive breeder male, okay? You got to have the stomach for the fact that male is going to be worth half as much next year, and you're going to lose half your capital investment in that male in the first year, the way things are right now. But if you've planned it out and and you didn't buy that male early, that's why it's ridiculous to buy a male a year earlier than you need to, because it's unproductive. You want that male to become ready right when your females are ready that you intend to pair him on. And so as long as you've planned it and you understand the actual economics of it, it's not this simplistic buy $1,000 animal, buy $1,000 animal, and they're going to make me $6,000 a year for the next 20 years. That's not how it works. So look at the market trends and look at the depreciation of given morphs. Focus on the things that are harder to make. That's why in ball pythons I'm focusing on double recessives, triple recessives, because they're harder to make, makes them a little bit more rare, makes them hold their value a little bit longer, in theory.
In theory. Good point. Good point. And watch how I segue here to a point that we made earlier. This is going to be fun. So, and you're not going to know that. You might not know all of that stuff, you know, when you're 1, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years into the hobby to a business. But, you know, there's going to be people that do. So what you need to do, here comes, watch me do this. What you really need is those 3 mentors that you can go back and hopefully you found mentors that are going to say, are you flipping nuts buying a lily white right now? The market is as high as it's going to be, and it's a dominant, and you better have something pretty doggone focused on what you want to do as a niche to get you through, because tomorrow, next year, they're going to be half, and the year after that, they're going to be half. Are you okay with that? So hopefully you have a mentor that's going to be very honest and you know, not just help you with the locations of these animals and the temperatures and breeding and blah, 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 but maybe somebody else that can help you from a business end, and that gets you back to the getting these, you know, very laser-focused groups that you can get into as well, and kind of bounce ideas off of each other, right?
Yeah, for sure. I have a special group. That's an Instagram chat. That's sort of my gut check group. And these are people that we're sort of in a mutual accountability to. And if we're having doubts about buying an animal, we hit each other up. Or if we feel pressured to buy something because it's a deal, auctions are terrible for this. You know, they're great because you can pick up some great deals, but they also create a false sense of urgency. And it makes you jump on deals with suboptimal genes. Can do that. Doesn't always, but sometimes you get really great stuff in auctions, but a lot of times people use auctions as a way to sort of cull out their weaker genes, you know.
Spot on.
You gotta, you know, so it's good to have people around you that are there to say, hey, that's a great deal, or are you crazy? You know, think about this. It's a single gene recessive. Is that really, and do you have plans for that recessive? Do you have others for that recessive? Or are you just starting a whole new project with this one discount opportunity? You know, is this going to take you down a rabbit hole that you don't want to follow?
I tell you, folks, if you've been listening up until this point, that I'll say it over and over and over and over because it's so important. That's your main takeaway from this. There's so much. There's been so many great points, Craig. I really appreciate you bringing your insight into this show, this session. But of all the points, you know, go out and find some people that you trust and you can talk to and you can share and bounce ideas off of. And you know, that doesn't mean that they're the ultimate and end all. That just means use that information to use the information and maybe some Google Scholar or whatever, and then come up with the best decision that you can from your common sense and what makes sense to you. Great points. Can you think of any other tips? We could go. I have this scheduled for 24 hours. I don't know if I want to keep you for 24 hours, though. I think that would be mean and cruel. But I tell you what.
I'm ready.
I know you are. And I could go 24 hours. I think this is a great 101. How to take your hobby into a business, and I would love to have you on for a 201 intermediate hobby to business. I've had a blast here. Can you think of anything else that you want to leave our viewers with, as far as, you know, maybe a helpful tip, a helpful idea from making that leap into doing this as a business?
Okay, I I've been thinking a lot about this, and if this has some value to you, I hope it does. If it doesn't, ignore it. Okay, but I think success in this business requires two things. First, humility, right? We're humble before these animals and their needs, and we're humble about our experience levels. We're not coming into this new thinking we're an OG, right? So you have to be humble and you have to be correctable, okay? Otherwise, you're in for a world of hurt. But you also have to have some hubris. You also have to believe that you have something to contribute, whether that's social media content. And I would say if you're making mistakes and learning from them, that's your social media content, you know? And most of my reels come from my mistakes, you know? And I think the biggest waste is if I learn a lesson and I don't share it with others, then I feel like it's a wasted lesson. So this combination of humility, I don't know everything. I'm okay to show people that I know. I don't care that people find out that I don't know anything. I don't know enough. I don't know everything. You have to kind of drop your pride a little bit to have that. But then you have to be like, you know, I could do this. I can do this. It's not, you know, rocket science. And I have a contribution to make. You have to believe both things. And when they get out of balance is when we get into trouble.
That sounds like kind of soapbox-ish kind of talk, but oh my gosh. There's not a week that goes by where at some point in the facility that I'm not saying to myself, yeah, you're an idiot. Why do you
Right.
do this? What the heck, you know? There's not a point that I'm not, okay, you know what? Scrub the board, go back upstairs, go to your mentors, and find out what the heck you just did wrong so that you can learn. So, you know, open mind to continue to learn. Outstanding point, Greg, outstanding point. But also having a little ounce, you know, if you're making a recipe, you know, just a little pinch of that, I am going to be best. You know, eventually I'm
Yep.
going to be the best that I can be, and I'm going to set this hobby, this business, you know, on its ear, and, you know, gosh darn it, I'm okay, and I'm going to do great things. So, but to your point, well said, you can look at both of those, but if you combine them and you can find that balance, man, oh man, that's the key right there. Well said. Well said. Unbelievable information. This is just incredible to have this session. I've had so much fun. I wanted to
too.
do a session like this, and again, 101 tomorrow, 201, or maybe not tomorrow, maybe in a few months. But I would love to have you on again, and let's talk.
Sure.
Let's take it to the next level. Let's you know, kind of highlight some of these 101 points, and let's take it to the next point of 201. You know, I know geckos, you know snakes, and somehow, some way, we kind of melted this whole thing into reptile business. So I
Awesome.
think that was so cool. Why don't you tell folks, because I didn't know who you were. I'm a gecko person. I'm doing research on you know, Instagram and Facebook. I don't know who you are, but then I saw one of your videos. Yes, one of your videos on Instagram, and it's like, holy cow, this guy knows what he's talking about. And he's, like you said before, you had a different way of saying things that you are going to develop a community, and those people are going to stay with you like forever. So, and I'll be one of them. I'll be at everybody's side. Unbelievable information, and you're sharing in a way that makes people feel like, yeah, let's go, baby. Let's go. Tell people how they can find you, and especially talk about your YouTube projects, because I think that
Yeah.
you have a couple of special things going on there, and Instagram, of course.
Yeah. So on Instagram, you can find me at BashCoder. On YouTube, it's the same thing, youtube.com/@BashCoder. BashCoder is one word. That's the best way to connect with me. If you want to learn about camera gear, recording gear, microphones, how to edit videos, things like that. I've got a special Instagram group. You can DM me, and we call it the Reptile AV Club. And so it's fun. We just talk about geek stuff. We geek out about microphones. We geek out about cameras. We help people kind of improve their quality of their reels and their YouTube stuff. On YouTube, we have a show called The Reptile Workshop. And the idea of the show is that it's a project, start to finish in an hour. So the idea is not waste anyone's time with stuff they already know. We'll try to just say, 1 hour, start to finish, this is a project. We might do it on rodents. We might do it on, we did something called the chopping block, what we mentioned before. We did one on shed testing with Charlie from Gray Rider Reptiles, shedtesting.com. We do another that's a contest. We've got a contest. We've got a new episode dropping. Well, it'll be out by the time this is out for sure. This episode is a contest where we're doing an extreme media makeover on a reptile breeder, and we're looking at all their socials, their branding, and we're bringing in some top mentors to give them advice live on the show, so we all get to see it too, and we all get to have that. So it's a project. We only do about one per month, because I just can't be overwhelmed with the YouTube grind. But that's our little side project there. So yeah, that's how to reach me. DM me on Instagram. You can also send me an email at bash@bashcoder.com.
I'm going to share this again. I kind of said it, but I kind of didn't. I'm not. My time is just so gone during a day. It's just gone.
Yeah.
And I have listened to your YouTube's videos. Why, Wally? Why? You're a gecko person. What are you getting out of snake stuff? And I'll listen to this, and it's like, oh my gosh, we should do that with crested geckos. We should have a program like that for crested geckos. This morph did this morph, and why in the world are you doing that? Or maybe you should do this with this man. Outstanding information. If you're into snakes, you cannot miss this. And again, what is it called, Craig?
The Reptile Workshop.
The Reptile Workshop. If you're into snakes, you have to subscribe and you have to watch this. Even if you're into other animals, the shed testing episode, I stopped that video probably 3 times because I listened, when I'm in the facility feeding or cleaning or whatever.
Yeah.
I at least 3 times where it was like, wait a minute, what did he say? How is that working? And I'll walk over to my phone, and I'll walk to the sink, I'll clean my hands, and I'll walk to my phone, and I'll make little notes of it. It's a snake show. Why in the world? Because it's interesting, and it's information that kind of envelops the whole hobby. It was really cool. I got a lot out of it, so I thank you for those episodes.
I'm glad to hear that.
I'm looking forward to more. Once a month, though. You've got to do 4. You've got to do one a week.
Yeah, I will. Eventually, I'll get to the point where this editing isn't such a chore. But right now, it just takes me too long to plan and do this. I sort of set myself up for hard work because the idea of the show needs a new idea for every episode. So I have to come up with a new concept for every episode the way I've done it. So maybe after I've done 12, I can go through and do those 12 again for another year. But yeah, eventually we'll get to more content. But I've fallen in love with these 90-second reels. I think you can, if you work at it, it's like a tweet. You can really fit maximum amount of info in a short amount of time, and that's sort of a challenge for me, so I like that.
I love doing the shorts, too. I find, again, my time, I struggle with, okay, should I do a short? Should I do 4 or 5 shorts? Should I do a long form? And my heart is so into the long form that sometimes, what my plans are doesn't really, turn out to be what actuality is. But, when you say that you need topics, I'm going to start tonight and I'm going to start writing down topics for you so we can convince you to do more frequent videos on YouTube. Okay. They are, and in all honesty, they are super cool. And I never, ever thought that I would be watching snake videos, but they're not. They span. So thank you very much for doing those. Thank you very much for coming on the show. This has been a blast. It's been a pleasure. It's been It's been
Me
an
as
honor
well.
to have you. You're very polished, and you present things in a very understandable manner, and I greatly appreciate that. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for saying so. That's awful nice of you.
We'll see you, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thanks for watching.
Thanks all.